Hi guys, chapter 17, Goldilocks, Wanted Dead or Alive. It was just before sundown and soldiers from the corner kingdom were hot on Goldilocks' trail. She had been spotted on the outskirts of Baker's village in the early afternoon and had been on the run ever since. A group of 20 men were right behind her on their horses, determined to take her into custody by any means necessary. Luckily for her, Goldilocks had the fastest horse in all of the kingdom. "Come on, Porridge," Goldilocks said to her horse. "You can make it, girl. We're almost to the border." They passed Rapunzel's tower and crossed into the dwarf's forest, but the soldiers kept chasing her. In doing so, they were breaking laws that the Happily Ever After Assembly had enacted, but then again, Goldilocks had broken so many laws she had lost count, so she doubted the soldiers would experience any repercussions for it. Porridge had an advantage over the other horses, since she knew the dwarf forest by heart. She and Goldilocks gained a lot of ground from knowing what was behind every tree and which path led to where. "Split up and find her," Goldilocks heard one of the soldiers order from behind her. Goldilocks could feel her horse getting tired. They had been running for hours, and she knew Porridge needed a break soon if they were going to stay on the run any longer. They came across an abandoned barn that was particularly hidden by trees. Goldilocks had often used this place to hide from anyone hot on her trail. "Porridge, I'm going to hide in there and wait it out," Goldilocks told her loyal horse. "Find some place safe and rest. Meet me back here tomorrow at sunrise." Porridge nodded and galloped away. Goldilocks withdrew her sword and approached the barn. The door was off its hinges. It looked like someone or something had forced its way in recently. The inside of the barn was a disaster. Stacks of hay were knocked over, stables were broken down into nothing but bits of broken wood, and there were bloodstains on the floor and walls. But thankfully, whatever had caused this damage wasn't there anymore. Goldilocks put away her sword. She wasn't intimidated by the barn in the slightest. She had seen much worse, had been through much worse, and had caused much worse in her days on the run. She took off her long coat and her sword and began unlacing her tall boots, getting ready to settle in for the night. Something colorful caught her eye while she was doing it. A bright blue fabric was sticking out from the bottom of a haystack. Goldilocks pulled it out from under the haystack and examined it. It was a beautiful, bright blue gown with delicate stitching. It reminded Goldilocks of a dress she had owned when she was a girl. It had been so long since the last time she'd worn a dress. She discovered a mirror hanging on the barn wall. It was slightly tilted and it cracked at the bottom half, but she could still see her reflection perfectly. She didn't like what she saw. Goldilocks was young, but she had aged so much since the last time she had seen her reflection so clearly. She was a full-grown woman now. Goldilocks undressed and put on the blue dress. She let her hair down and ruffled it up a bit. She wiped off all the dirt on her face with a handkerchief and looked in the mirror again. She stared at herself, completely awestruck. She had forgotten how beautiful she could be. She only wished Jack could see her looking like this. "Such beauty, such a waist," said a voice. In the blink of an eye, Goldilocks had retrieved her sword and extended it in front of her. "Who's there?" Goldilocks demanded, but she didn't see anyone else in the barn. "If only the world could see what I see now, Goldilocks, a woman feared throughout all the kingdoms, standing vulnerably in a dress," said the voice. "Don't be a coward. Show yourself," Goldilocks said. She turned back to the mirror, but didn't see her reflection. Another woman with a pale face and a dark hooded cloak was staring back at her. "Hello, Goldilocks," the woman in the mirror said. "You," Goldilocks said. There was only one woman in the world who could positively have the ability to communicate from mirror to mirror. "I know you. You're the queen everyone is looking for." "Yes, the evil queen. We're both women on the run." "What do you want with me?" Goldilocks said. "Why do you assume I need something from you?" the evil queen said. I've appeared to you simply to pass along some information I've recently acquired." "Nice try, but I'm not some ditzy maiden you can con," said Goldilocks, getting closer to the mirror. "Try giving me a poisoned apple and I'll shove it down your throat." "No, of course not," the evil queen said in a mocking tone. "You're just poor little Goldilocks, a girl who was tricked into thinking she was going on a date with the boy she loved and has been running from the law ever since." Goldilocks stepped away from the mirror. "How do you know that?" she asked with intensity in her eyes. "I know more about you than anyone," the evil queen said. "I know that when you were a young girl, you received a handwritten letter from a young boy you loved named Jack. He asked you to meet him in a house a little way out of town and gave instructions on how to get there. You went to the house and waited for hours, but he never showed up." "How do you know all this?" Goldilocks asked. "You became sleepy in that house, didn't you?" the evil queen continued. "So you decided to go to sleep in one of the beds and hope you'd wake up to find him. But you didn't wake up to him, did you? You woke to find 3 bears staring down at you. They almost killed you. You barely escaped the house alive. But the bears pressed charges against you anyway for breaking into their home, and being young and scared, you ran. You ran and have been running ever since. For years you wondered how Jack could have done that to you. How could he have framed you like that? And then, finally, one night, you snuck into Red Riding Hood Kingdom and asked him. But Jack told you he'd grown up poor and illiterate. He hadn't sent you the letter because he never learned to write. Someone else did. Someone else framed you. Jack has been looking for you for years. He was devastated when you disappeared. He even climbed a beanstalk looking for you. You two have been meeting covertly in the shadows for almost a decade now. Who told you that? Goldilocks asked. Every driven person comes from a mountain of pain they wish to keep hidden, the evil queen said. I did my research on you, Goldilocks, and you and I aren't so different, except I know who wrote that letter. Goldilocks shook her head in disbelief. How could she know something Goldilocks had been trying to discover her entire life? And who might that be, she asked. Red Riding Hood, of course, the evil queen said. What? Goldilocks said. She almost stopped breathing. It's true, the evil queen said. The young queen has a large mirror in her bedroom and talks in her sleep. You'd be appalled by the things she confesses in her nightmares. Goldilocks had to sit down. She didn't even feel human anymore. She felt like an entity made of pure anger. Red Riding Hood has always loved Jack, and you were standing in the way, the evil queen said. She was young when she wrote the letter. She had no idea what the consequences would be. She thought you would leave broken-hearted before the bears got home, and then Jack would be hers. But she's had years and years worth of opportunities to make things right, Goldilocks said. Her eyes were staring down at the ground, but she was blind with rage. She stood up, threw off the blue gown, and redressed in her own clothes, sword and all. What will you do now that you know the truth? The evil queen asked. I'm going to take Red on a trip, Goldilocks said, and she's not coming back. There's only one place where she can disappear forever, the evil queen said, and her reflection faded from the mirror. Goldilocks burst out of the barn and ran into the night, whistling for her horse. She was about to do exactly what the evil queen wanted, but, more important, she was about to get her long overdue revenge. See you next time, guys.